I want to talk about Mark chapter 12, and I want to talk about some of the things that Jesus said. And it's just observations that I had that I really enjoyed reading today. So Jesus has made his way into Jerusalem, and so he's in his last days. He knows that soon he's going to be crucified, but he's what we're reading right now in Mark chapter 11 and 12 are the Pharisees and the Sadducees and a bunch of different groups of people are trying to trick Jesus. They're trying to get him to say something that's going to get him in trouble and that will discredit him because he's throwing a wrench into their plans and he's threatening their power and their influence, and they don't appreciate that. So one of the stories that he starts out by telling is the story about a vineyard where the owner of a vineyard he plants a vineyard, he builds everything he needs for this vineyard, and he puts a lot of people in charge of it, and then he leaves. And then when he sends a messenger, when it's after the harvest, it's time to collect his money for what the workers did in his vineyard. The workers end up beating up the messenger. And so he sends another one, and they beat him up, and he sends another one, and they end up killing this messenger. And this happens several times. And this is a story that Jesus is telling in front of the Pharisees. And he says in the story, eventually the vineyard owner says, well, I'll send my son. And my son, surely they will respect my son, and they will do the right thing. And then Jesus continues the story and says that no, they killed the son and threw him over the fence. And then he says, do you know what the owner of the vineyard is going to do now? He's going to come back and he's going to completely clean house. He's going to get rid of those people that were in charge of his vineyard, and he's going to put other people in charge. So if the people listening to this, the Pharisees and the religious leaders, no, I don't think it was the Pharisees, but it was some of the religious leaders, they immediately knew what he was talking about. They were the men who God had put in charge of the vineyard, put in charge of his people on earth. They were the ones in power. And they had killed John the Baptist. So if you're drawing a parallel, the messengers in the story went and tried to tell the people what to do, which is exactly what John had done, and they killed him. And so the people listening, they recognized what Jesus was talking about. And then he says, well, the vineyard owner is sending his son, and he's saying, God is sending his son. I am God's son. So this really irritated the religious leaders even more. So then later the Pharisees tried to trick him again, and they sent someone to ask a question. And he did it under the guise of asking a real question, like he really cared about the answer, but it was really just a trick. And he says, teacher, what do you say about paying taxes to Caesar? And this was a trick, because if Jesus were to answer, oh, you need to pay your taxes to Caesar, then the Jewish people wouldn't have appreciated it, and they would have been angry at him. But if he said, no, you shouldn't pay your taxes to Caesar, well, then the people who followed Herod would report him and have him arrested. So there was they thought they had him. This was the trick question. We got him. But then he says just an amazing thing that no one can argue with, and he says, give to Caesar what is Caesar, and give to God what is God. Look at this coin, and whose name is on it? Caesar's name. Whose head is on it? Caesar's head. Give it to Caesar. It doesn't matter. But you give God what is God's. No one's angry about that answer, except for the people trying to trick him, because it didn't work. And then there were just all kinds of ways that Jesus answered these questions, and he was so clever and so quick, and made his point in such a sharp way that really just dug in and irritated the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Jews who were supporters of Herod and the Romans. So that's what I enjoyed in my reading today, and that's all I've got.